It's time for the Hockey Minute, your source for all of today's hockey news with some opinion. Strap in for the fastest news in the NHL. This episode is proudly brought to you by fucking nobody. We don't have any sponsors. Now, here's your hosts, Brandon and Ryan.
Hey, I'm your host Brandon, and here with me is my co-host Ryan. And today we have for you part 2 of a 3-part series on the NHL Trophy race. Today we're going to take a look at the Hart, Art Ross, and Rocket Richard. But let's get started with the Calder. The Calder Trophy is awarded to the league's most outstanding rookie player, named after Frank Calder, the first NHL president. And the last year's winner was my boy, Elias Pettersson. Who's your pick this year for the Calder, Ryan?
Well, this is another one that's kind of, it's close, right? It's coming down to two guys. I don't think, I'll give a shout out to Dominic Kubalik in Chicago, who had 30 goals. He's also 24. Like, he played a few years professionally in Europe, and quick shout out to him. But it's between Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, two. I think you called them generational defensemen for their respective teams. Yep. I'm going to go with Makar. Cale Makar, 50 points in 57 games. Just the start of the year, they had kind of those odd stats that you see where it's like, in the first 23 games of his career, he had this amount of points, and like those types of stats, I kind of think are a little bit cheesy, but they still proved a point that he was, I think, at a point per game at one point, first couple months. And his overall game, I think, still needs a little bit of work. But as we talked about the Norris, that's the era we're in. It seems like the best defenseman, the ones that get paid, he's a right shot defenseman too. So he's going to get an extra $1 million on his next contract just for being, a right shot defenseman. But that's what teams want nowadays. And I was kind of, on the fence with this pick because Colorado, I think, just has a better team.
For sure.
And I think for Makar, outside of him, there's Sam Girard, there's Eric Johnson, who's a very serviceable top 4 guy. Nikita Zadorov. But Makar kind of, he was the straw that stirred the drink on the blue line for Colorado this year. And I think the hype was real. I think that he's going to win the Calder. Quinn Hughes, certainly, I know you'll present a case on him, but to me, just Makar was just more flash, right? I think that's what I saw a little bit more of. So he's my pick, and
yeah,
I don't know. This one's too close.
Yeah,
so.
It's okay. You're allowed to be wrong. It's fine that everybody's allowed one bad pick. For me, Quinn Hughes is clearly the Calder winner. I know Cale Makar started out flashier for sure. You're absolutely right about that. But as the season went along, I think Quinn Hughes brought his game up to a level that Cale Makar was still trying to reach. I know their points per game is something that gets brought up all the time, but they're way closer than people think, especially after the All-Star break. I think Quinn Hughes was actually outpacing Cale Makar. One thing I think you can really notice when you just watch them play is Cale Makar looks a little bit bigger. Like, they're both fairly slight, but you can see almost, Cale Makar is a full year older than Quinn Hughes as well, and I think you can see that, especially at the start of the season, with confidence and stuff handling the puck. And not that Quinn Hughes was ever not confident, but Cale Makar, he's hanging down to his knees, right? He's got some swagger in how he plays with the puck, which absolutely stands out. But I think something that gets missed with Cale Makar too much is that the number 1 defenseman in Colorado is Sam Girard. And what they've done is they've sheltered Cale Makar to play mostly with the McKinnon line as much as possible, right? To give him that potent offense as well as to kind of shelter him defensively. And Quinn Hughes in Vancouver is an island alone as the number 1 defenseman. There's nobody else. They've insulated him with Chris Tanev, who's a phenomenal shutdown defenseman. He's a defensive savant, honestly, when it comes to his stick work and his positioning, and his first pass, actually. But he's not what he used to be. He's a 3-4 on an okay team, and and that's who they paired Quinn Hughes with. And Quinn Hughes has absolutely shone through the whole process. He's quarterbacked the power play, which has been a revolution for the team. It's completely changed the look on the power play. He's just, to to me, like you brought up the word, but he is absolutely generational, and so is Cale Makar. Like, we're blessed to be able to watch both of these guys for years to come. Dominic Kubalik is, he comes from the Artemi Panarin school of middle-aged rookies, right? Like, he's good for sure. I mean, it's hard to scoff at 30 goals. I mean, I think Besser finished with 29 in his rookie season, which was, phenomenal at the time. So I'm not saying anything negative about Kubalik. I think that maybe in another year he would get more due. But as it stands for this year, I think Quinn Hughes is for me, at least with a bullet, the rookie of the year.
Yeah, I don't think they're. Yeah, I think he can go either guy. You're probably good with, and I don't know. Who do you think's going to have the better career when all is said and done? I mean, we've got.
Oh man, that's so tough. I mean, both teams are set up to be successful for years to come. I think they're going to have big battles, but something in me just says that Quinn Hughes has that X factor where he wants to be. He wants to be the best, and like obviously all the guys that are playing have that drive, but Hughes has this quiet confidence that something tells me he's actually going to be, he's going to be in Norris contention for years, which I'm sure Makar is as well. So I guess it's, we're just going to have to wait and see. But I mean, for me, I couldn't be more excited. Like, I think in any other year, Dominic Kubalik or Elvis Merzlikins or, there's other candidates who have still been having stellar years, but just because of the quality of this year's rookie candidates, they're kind of getting, left in the shadows a bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. It'll be interesting because it's 10, 15 more years of Hughes and Makar, but it's so tough too. I mean, it depends on the team, I think, a little bit. You are right, Makar is a little bit sheltered, but he's only going to get better. They're both only going to get better, but I don't know. I think we've agreed to disagree on this, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I get one. So
all right. So next up, we're going to talk about the Hart Memorial Trophy, and the Hart Trophy is awarded to the player judged most valuable to his team. The original trophy was donated to the league by Dr. David A. Hart, father of Coach Cecil Hart. Last year's winner was Nikita Kucherov. Ryan, who do you have for the Hart this year?
Well, I'm going to go just based on Taylor Hall's win a couple of years ago. I'm going to go with Nathan MacKinnon. I know that a lot of people are probably going to say it's one of the Edmonton guys, but Nathan MacKinnon this year he's got 93 points, top 5 point getter in the league. Second place on that Colorado team is Cale Makar. Cale Makar had 50, as we mentioned a few minutes ago. So a 43-point difference there. And when Taylor Hall won the Hart Trophy in 2018, he was on a Devils team where he ran that show. It's a little bit of a different scenario because Taylor Hall had to drag his team into the playoffs. Colorado's a good team to begin with, but considering they're still second in the entire Western Conference, and I mean this is a club that, I mean, they lost so many man games. I'm just taking a quick peek through their roster here. Gabriel Landeskog, he missed some time. Mikko Rantanen only played 42 games this year. Those are great players, but I think it's MacKinnon. I think that just in general, you can say every year there's maybe, as Kucherov was last year, was the best player in the league last year, but there's always going to be the McDavids and the Crosbys that are just every year you expect them to be great. And Nathan MacKinnon, to me, is in that echelon right now, where not only is he overall a top 3 to 5 player, this year in particular, I think he showed his value. And I'll make an argument here because for those Edmonton guys, we saw McDavid go down, Draisaitl picked up the slack. Well, if MacKinnon goes down, I don't think Landeskog and Rantanen can carry the load like MacKinnon does. So in the spirit of the award, and it's the age-old debate of, is it going to the best player overall, or is it going to the guy who means the most to their team? I go with MacKinnon because I think that he means the most to his team, and I still think he's a top 2 or 3 player in the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on MacKinnon being that valuable. I'm gonna lean on Leon Draisaitl for my pick for the Hart, but just first on Nathan MacKinnon, there's I don't think there's anybody I'd rather watch play live than Nathan MacKinnon. He's an absolute animal to watch him on the ice, right? The way that he cuts it up, it's unreal to watch him skate, how fast he stick handles, how hard he shoots, he hits people. He's an incredible monster to watch play. And he may be the most valuable to his team, but it's hard, man. Like, I really believe that, like, we all know that Connor McDavid went down this year, and he went down for, whatever it was, 3 weeks, I guess. And Draisaitl managed to step up and save their season. And I realized that McKinnon essentially did the same thing for a longer time with Colorado, but they've got a better team in Colorado. They may not have as big name of players, but it's a general better team. I mean, like, look at the supporting cast in Edmonton and who they've got around them, right? Like, Draisaitl did that with Kyler Yamamoto and Nugent Hopkins. Like, they're not bad players, but they're not.
Whoa! I mean, hey.
I know. Okay, it's probably Kyler Yamamoto that we should be talking about for the Hart, but that's a real dark horse pick. I don't know if he's got enough games.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, the fact that Draisaitl stepped up to be about 2 points a game for the whole time that McDavid was out, and that he managed to lead a team that does have the best player in the world on it for points, shows a level of consistency in dragging his team into the fight that I think may go underappreciated because he's there with McDavid. But I really believe he's if not the main driver on that team, he's like a 1B. Like, I don't even think you could call him a step below McDavid, just when you watch kind of his size and how he controls the game. Yeah, he's pretty special. So yeah, my pick for the Hart is still going to be Draisaitl.
Yeah, Leon. You know what? I spent the better part of the 2000s and the 2010s watching Crosby and Malkin, annihilate my Capitals. Right. But watching McDavid, I mean, he's the Crosby. I think Draisaitl has that ability, and he's already shown it this year. When Crosby would get hurt, Malkin would suddenly, like, Malkin to me is Crosby's skill in Ovechkin's body, and Draisaitl kind of follows that mold because, when the best player on his team or the best player in the world goes down, he suddenly takes it to another level. And, I remember when he signed that deal a couple of years ago and people were saying it's an overpayment and he's only a product of McDavid. And you go back and you look, I mean, he was split up, and you got to credit the coaching staff in Edmonton to take that risk. They split them up and he drove the line. And like you said, 110 points this year.
Yeah.
In a shortened season. I mean, he was on pace to potentially get past what Kucherov did last year. So, he's actually one of my more kind of underwatched players, I think, based on who he plays with.
Yeah, exactly. And not everybody wants to watch an Edmonton game, even though it does have some pretty exciting players on it.
Not even Oiler fans want to watch Edmonton.
They haven't for the last few, for sure. Well, speaking of Draisaitl, that's going to take us to our next award, which is the Art Ross Trophy, being awarded to the player who leads the league in total points at the end of the regular season, which I think we can safely assume is today, or, pretty close. Named after player, coach, and team executive Art Ross, who originally donated the trophy. Last year's winner was Nikita Kucherov, and obviously this year's winner is going to be Leon Draisaitl, unless something drastic happens. I just thought we'd quickly touch on that and what a tremendous season he's had. I mean, I think you just mentioned 110 points. What was second place? 96?
97 by number 97. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so he's got a 13-point gap on second place, and there's still 13-ish games to go in the regular season. I think this is a pretty safe one to call. It's going to be Leon Draisaitl. Do you have anything to add there?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we expect that from guys like Draisaitl and McDavid. I know our producer Matt and one of our writers Jules, and they're back in New York, and we got to give a shout out to Artemi Panarin. He was in the hunt. I mean, he didn't come close to Draisaitl, but 95 points. Again, another guy that when he signed that ticket, a lot of people wondered if he was going to live up to it in his first year, and going from Columbus to New York, it's a bit of a difference in the market, and he lived up to it. So, the Art Ross is really just one of those awards. Obviously, it's if you win it, if you have the most points, you win it. But Just looking at some of the names, it's an exciting time for the NHL because you got Draisaitl, who was drafted in 14, McDavid drafted in 15, Pasternak drafted in 14. He had 95 points as well. McKinnon was there. So, even Austin Matthews and Jack Eichel had top 10 in points, seasons. And all these young guys coming up, man. I mean, when I played, nutrition was chocolate milk and a Kit Kat after a game. And now these young guys are just, they're machines. And it makes for great hockey. And so Draisaitl putting up 110 points, I think, it'll be exciting to see what him and McDavid and McKinnon, all those guys can do in the next handful of years as well.
Absolutely. All right, so next up, we're going to tackle the Rocket Richard, which obviously is awarded to the top goal scorer in the regular season, named after Maurice Richard, the first NHL player to score 50 goals in 50 games. Last year, no surprise, the year Alex Ovechkin was the winner. And this year, it looks like Ovi is going to tie it again with Pasternak with, I believe, 48 goals. Am I right there?
48. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's death taxes and Alex Ovechkin leading league in goals. At this point, I mean, it's wild. I'll touch on Ovechkin and just, I've watched him, I'm sure you have too, but I've watched him his entire career, been a fan of that team. And he's the old guy on this list too. And again, and just to quickly kind of recap, I mean, Austin Matthews had 47, Pasternak, he had 48, but Draisaitl was there as a Zibanejad, Kyle Connor, all in the mix. And Ovechkin just does it year in and year out. And it's amazing to see. They, for all the talk of the Selke, people want the Selke to be renamed the Bergeron Trophy. No disrespect to Rocket Richard, but I think we're going to have to look at maybe changing the name of the trophy to the Ovechkin Award because he's just so consistent. And, it was kind of funny in January. He had that monster streak and people were busy talking about, the Leafs, Matthews and Pasternak. And so I don't know. I mean, he's just so consistent. And I think now that he's got his cup, kind of takes that pressure, that team aspect away from him a little bit, and he can just focus on chasing down Wayne's record.
Maybe this is something that you're more aware of because you obviously are a bigger fan of the Capitals. I maybe watch 5 to 10 Washington games a year, but I think he's underrated. Ovechkin is in how good he is positionally, away from the puck, right? He's smart in where he puts his body, where he's boxing out guys because he's obviously a tank. Right, there's nobody can move him, but his board play and those kinds of things, I think they go under the radar for people because all they see is that big shot. But he's a legitimately brilliant hockey mind when it comes to how to set himself up to score.
Yeah, and you know what, he hit the nail on the head. Sometimes you watch the games and he's kind of floating around, but what he's doing is I think he's getting smarter too because he's on the wrong side of 30, right. And when you're playing in the NHL. It's all about durability at that stage in the game. And you start to see that with some guys that are just getting older in the league. They start taking less risks. They're not playing as physical. You're right. He's a tank. I mean, I don't believe the listed weight. He's usually listed at around 235, and he just seems like he's heavier.
Yeah.
But, but just the fact that he's... people always say, well, he just parks himself on the power play. He waits for the pass and he one-times it. But, you see some of when he gets on his horse and his wrist shot at full speed is faster than some guy's slap shots.
Oh, man.
And on top.
Yeah, terrifying, legitimately terrifying to be a goalie or a defenseman trying to block that stuff. Jesus Christ.
So, but we've seen it now for 15 years.
Yeah.
And he just continues to do it. And like I said, I think he just looks like he's having a little more fun out there. It's nice that he still has that goal in front of him, though, because there was that speculation that now he's got his cup, he's just going to go back to the KHL and hang out there for the end of his career. But I think he knows he's within range of doing something that really nobody's been able to do, right? All the great players that he passed this year, Messier and Yzerman and Gartner and all those types of guys that he's surpassed, they didn't come close to Wayne. And Ovechkin still, if he can get 5 or 6 more good years, we might have a new goal champion.
And for some reason, it really picked up this year, the talk, even though he didn't, he's been getting that much closer every year. But as soon as he hit 700, it's like, holy shit, this might actually happen. It might be one of the greatest records in professional sports is actually being challenged. So pretty wild. And I actually think he's going to do it. I really do. I think this is his goal now. It feels like it's kind of what he set his sights on. Backstrom's got his new deal. So, there's no real impediment.
Well, what was funny? Yeah, what was funny about that too is he was sitting at 699 for like a week and a half. And people were like, "Oh, I wonder if it's getting to him." It's like he scored 699 goals, and you're now worried he can't score one more. So, I mean, I just think you're going to have your puck luck, you're going to have your hot streaks, but at the end of the year, they don't ask, what your input or your output was. It's just what's the number at the end of the year, and it's always been around 50 for him. So, did you have any thoughts on Pasternak? I mean, he's emerging as the heir to Ovechkin, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's a bit more dynamic, kind of in traffic and those things, right? He's a bit flashier with his stick handling, but he's absolutely setting himself up to be in that same position. He's honestly kind of more fun to watch than Ovi is, like just in his regular play, just because of how quick he is out there, right, and how much he's moving. But for some reason, I still think it's going to be Ovi winning these next few years, even though Pass is going to be challenging. I think Ovi's got that competitive fire to keep 1 or 2 goals above, but I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to watch Pasta going forward, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got some of the best hands too. I don't think people talk about his hands enough, but some of the goals he scores in tight, he has goals that he's like at the crease and he goes backhand, forehand, backhand, or forehand, backhand, forehand, something like that. It's really impressive to watch.
Absolutely. Well, that about wraps part 2 of the NHL Trophy race. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Hockey Minute.
We'd like to take a second and thank you, the listener, for joining us. And a big thanks goes to our writers and production team, Jules, Mark, and Matt. We couldn't do this without you. That's going to do it for us. This is Brandon and Ryan. We'll talk to you next time on the Hockey Minute.